Hello teachers! This video is going to look at some of the fabulous right brain techniques involved with learning and teaching scales. Now if you've ever said to a student something along the lines of, "I didn't like scales either, but you've got to learn them," then this is thinking in a very left brain kind of way, so this needs to change. Just as there is a visual, auditory and kinesthetic way of teaching pieces, we can also approach scales in the same way. Scales, as they're so important, they need a lot of tender love and care. You also need a huge amount of imagination with the way you have students learn them. Only then will pupils begin to respond and of course practice them without resentment. Scales are neither hard nor boring, it's very much up to us and the way we present them. Some students will naturally favour method and logic associated with the left brain. Others will prefer more fun type activities of the right brain. A good teacher uses both. You'll always be mixing and matching between the left and the right brain. You'll also be connecting these concepts within the simultaneous learning model. Okay, so here's some typical right brain activities for learning scales. Number 1, teaching a pupil to hear a scale internally. Number 2, sing scale patterns, anything from 2 or 3 notes to a full octave. 3, learning scales from memory. 4, teacher plays a scale with a deliberate wrong note and the pupil has to identify it. 5, improvising or composing in the key using the scale pattern. 6, choosing a well-known tune and playing it in the key by ear. 7, encouraging pupils to talk about and describe the characteristics of a scale as if they were describing a friend, including particular fingerings and technical ingredients, key signature and other interesting features. Finally, playing scales in the style of a piece or in the style of a composer. And here are some left brain activities for learning scales. Teaching the key signature. Number 2, teaching the note names. Number 3, teaching scales from notation. Number 4, writing scales down. And finally, working at the technical elements of the scale. The best way of teaching scales is where playing the actual scale comes late on in the process. It's done by presenting pupils with a series of musically linked, based on right and left brain activities, over a period of perhaps 3 or 4 weeks or longer, then gradually build up a holistic understanding and knowledge of that scale. The activities needn't come in any strict order, just improvise and think simultaneously. So here are some typical examples of teacher-led activities within the right brain. Play a scale to your pupil making deliberate mistakes and pupil have to spot the errors. 2. Teach simple and effective studies in the key. And finally, compose short exercises or teach subtle exercises or studies that help pupils to overcome a particular technical maneuver. Here are some examples of pupil-led activities. Left brain activities could be: what notes make up the scale? Learn to say them up and down. 2. Learn to write down the key signature and the scale. 3. Play the scale from notation, taking great care to prepare thoroughly first. Here are some examples now of right brain pupil-based activities. Hear the scale internally, sing it out loud. Perhaps begin with just 3 notes and maybe move to the first 4 or 5 notes and finally the whole scale, always pre-hearing each note first. 2. Improvise and or compose short phrases or tunes in the key. 3. Choose a well-known tune and play it by ear in the key. Don't worry about mistakes, simply attempting to find the right notes is a very useful process. And finally, talk about the scale. Can pupils find 3 or 4 features that define the scale? This activity is known as Scales and Friends. Practicing scales in one's imagination is also very helpful. No instrument is needed, so it can be done anywhere at any time. Research has shown that mental rehearsal of physical actions can be very effective. This is what's called motor imagery. Imagine you're playing a scale, think the fingering and hear the notes internally. Athletes often practice in this way and can be a very powerful form of learning. The next strategy for using the right brain when practicing scales is known as if. So what you would do, you would say to your students, I want you to play this scale or this particular note as if you are, and here's some examples. Play that note as if it's very close. 2. Play that note as if it's very far away. 3. Play that note as if you're turning the volume control up and down on your speaker system. 4. Play that note as if you had just seen a ghost. 5. Play these notes as if they are hailstones bouncing off a roof. 6. Play that phrase as if you're standing in the middle of a huge cathedral. 7. Play that phrase as if you're going to sleep. 8. Play that phrase as if you are in a bus driving over a bumpy road. 9. Play that phrase as if you are in a boat drifting gently along the river. 10. Play that phrase as if you are in a ferry crossing in a rough sea. And finally, play that phrase as if you were the Queen of England. Whilst teaching, it's really important to sometimes take a step back and listen to your language and think, am I being interesting enough with my language? Am I being imaginative? All these examples were about scales, but of course are applicable anywhere in music. Finally, to end this video, I'm going to talk about a left brain technique called 6 rhythms. Okay, the 6 rhythms method. You've got obviously 6 rhythms. The first one is long, short, long, short. The next one is short, long. The next one is long, short, 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 long. The next one is short, long, short, 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 long. The next one is short, short, long, short, 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 long. And finally, short, 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 long, short, 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 long. If you're wondering why I'm playing in B major, by the way, it's a well-known story about Mr. Chopin. He always used to start the students on B major. He felt in terms of technique, the natural balance of the black keys, the 2, then the 3, is good for positioning students in the correct technique from day 1. So once you've worked on some of your right brain techniques, you can then begin to push back over to the left brain and clean up the technique in this way. Once you've done that, you can also again combine back again with the right brain. So you could say, play rhythm set 6, B major right hand, and I want you to imagine you've just seen a ghost. You might get something like this. Something quick, maybe staccato, more staccato, maybe like this. Then you could say something like, I want you to imagine, using rhythm set 1, that ascending you've seen a ghost. However, descending, I want you to imagine you're a swan floating along a lake. You might get something like this. These techniques can be used throughout lessons and also can be directed into their practice routine. You can even make flashcards. And finally, I'm just going to go through the 6 rhythms, again, using B major. Rhythm 1. Long, short, long, short. And now here's rhythm 2, short, long. Rhythm 3, long, shorter, short, long, shorter, short. Rhythm 4, short, long, shorter, short. And rhythm 5, short, short, long, shorter, short, long. And finally rhythm 6, short, 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 long, shorter, short, long. Another approach is to apply things such as bossa nova within a scale. Or some of the other stylistic elements, longer phrases, things like things like that. Make little tunes out them. Such as that. Some of the other interesting things you can do is to apply some of the conical rhythm techniques from the previous video. So for example, if you want to do some Spanish rhythms, it's very simple in 4/4. You take your 8 quavers and you subdivide unequally. For example, 3 plus 3 plus 2. And of course you put the accent at the start. Things like takita takita taka within a scale. Takita takita taka, 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 takita taka. Things like that. That was takita takita taka. Then you could move the substitution somewhere else. So things like 3 plus 2 plus 3. Takita taka takita. Things like that. Or you could do things like taka takita takita. Things like that. You move the accents again. You can then combine this with the very long bossa which I played before. Things like this. And what these methods do is they really work all areas of your technique. They work different muscles in your fingers harder than they should by applying the different rhythms. So then when it comes to actually playing a scale, normal, with a straight rhythm, then it becomes the easiest thing in the world. All the fingers are completely controlled and you can play it very quickly with a good even tone.